today, chat room, we have some very interesting news to talk about. Specifically, with Cyberpunk is the big thing I wanted to get into first. And Jason Schreier, the journalist, formerly the journalist at Kotaku, now working at Bloomberg, released a big expose article exposing what was going on during the development of Cyberpunk 2077. And it turns out, yeah, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And there was a lot more going on with that game than anybody could have ever anticipated was actually going wrong. Even to the point where it turns out the 2018 demo that they had for Cyberpunk 2077 was fake. Yeah, they didn't even finish finalizing the code for the actual gameplay when they released it. So it was just all just kind of made up little slice of mechanics and stuff that were just kind of put out there. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So this article is packed with a whole host of information that confirms a lot of suspicions that a lot of people had about the development of this game and where it was actually going the entire time. And along with a couple of other tweets after the article that Jason Schreier posted for things that he just couldn't even fit inside of the article or just couldn't find a proper place to put them in there. So we are going to check out this article and all it has to offer. And yeah, things are about to get very, very interesting in our discussion. Okay, so inside Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous rollout. And again, this article was posted by Jason Schreier, who has been right on a lot of accounts about the development of this game. So let's go through this article. So, of course, that video that I just made a video about the other day, turns out that was in preparation for the article that was coming. And yeah, they were batting down the hatches for what was to come and trying to get a little bit of good grace before the full manure storm ended up passing through the town. Another indication of how CD Projekt stretched things too far was that it tried to develop the engine technology behind Cyberpunk 2077, most of which was brand new, simultaneously with the game, which slowed down production. One member of the team compared the process to trying to drive a train while the tracks are being laid down in front of you at the same time. It might have gone more smoothly if the track layers had a few months head start. A few months head start. The game announced 8 years ago. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Adrian Jakubiaki. The homie Adrian, a former audio programmer for CD Projekt, said one of his colleagues asked during a meeting how the company thought it would be able to pull off a technically more challenging project in the same time frame as The Witcher. Someone answered, "We'll figure it out along the way," he said. For years, CD Projekt had thrived on that mentality, but this time, the company wasn't able to pull it off. "I knew it wasn't going to go well," said Adrian. "I just didn't know how disastrous it would be." Part of fans' disappointment is proportional to the amount of time they spent waiting for the game. Although Cyberpunk was announced in 2012, the company was then mainly focused on its last title and full development didn't start until 2016, employees said. That's when CD Projekt essentially hit the reset button, according to people familiar with the project. Oh, spicy. Studio head Adam Badowski took over as director, demanding overhauls to Cyberpunk's gameplay and story for the next year. Everything was changing, including fundamental elements like gameplay perspective. Top staff who had worked on The Witcher 3 had strong opinions on how Cyberpunk should be made, which clashed with the Badowski and led to the eventual departure of several top developers. Okay, so this section right here is very, very crucial. The fact that development for this game, even though it was announced in 2012, did not start until 2016, So there was a whole bunch of work that had been slowly being built up over the course of those 4 years. And then Adam Badowski comes in, takes over as director, and all of a sudden the entire vision of the game changes. Now, I had heard rumors that I don't know how true they are, but I've been hearing a lot of people, I think it's mostly speculation. There was a speculation that the implementing Keanu Reeves into the game and that bringing him into the game was not the original intention for the game, and that this whole entire plot with Keanu Reeves was not originally a part of it, and that he was kind of forced into the game, and then that everything around the game had to change because of it, because they got such a big name to help sell the game. So there is that theory that's been kind of prevailing, and this kind of leads into that. Like, what if they were working on this entire time, this kind of brand integration to a certain degree of Keanu Reeves into the game? Very interesting. But yeah, it makes you wonder how much progress was lost because they hit the reset button. And from what I've heard, this is not the first time over the course of development of Cyberpunk 2077 that they chose to have to reset where they were in their development at the time. Much of CD Projekt's focus, according to several people who worked on Cyberpunk 2077, was on impressing the outside world. A slice of gameplay was showcased at E3, the industry's main trade event in 2018. It showed the main character embarking on a mission, giving players a grand tour of the seedy, crime-ridden Night City. Fans and journalists were wowed by Cyberpunk 2077's ambition and scale. Whoops. What they didn't know was that the demo was almost entirely fake. CD Projekt hadn't yet finalized and coded the underlying gameplay systems, which is why so many features such as car ambushes were missing from the final product. Developers said they felt like the demo was a waste of months that should have gone into making the game. That's crazy. So just to break this down a little bit, this is exactly what happened to Anthem. It's kind of scary how similar of an experience that this is to Anthem, because the same thing happened where they were scrambling to put things together. There was such a heavy emphasis from studio heads to make the main focus be public persona and public image and hyping up the game. And so because of that, what you end up getting is a demo or a slice of the game that wasn't representative of where they actually were at the time of development. Demos are a strange thing at E3, because if you've seen the documentary, the God of War documentary, called Raising Kratos, it is an in-depth documentary about how they made, I think it was 2018, but the reboot of God of War 4, right? In that documentary, they showed what a struggle it is to actually do an E3 presentation and how difficult it is, because it takes so many resources and so much time to get so many of the theoretical things that you've been trying to create to actually all work together. And from what I can tell from, the many documentaries I've watched and interviews with the game developers, the process of making a game is there's a lot of separate and disparate parts, but it often is very further into the development of a game that all those systems start to cohesively come together and work together to give the presentation that you see and to give the experience that you're looking for the game and in the presentation. So forcing all those to work immediately is very, very difficult for an E3 presentation, for a version of the game that just is so hard for it to actually work like that. So yeah, but to cut the corner and to make something that is just flat out untrue is insane. And we all know, like, the whole entire thing with E3 demos. It's like they're normally not accurate to what the product ends up being, whether it's downgraded visuals and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, to literally not have the code is pretty crazy. Like, that is absolutely insane. And yeah, so I completely understand why they would say that it feels like they wasted their time, and they just should have been more silent. Absolutely insane. Okay, let's see here. Employees were working long hours, even though Owinski told staff that overtime wouldn't be mandatory on Cyberpunk 2077. More than a dozen workers said that they felt pressured to put in extra hours by their managers or co-workers anyway. There were times when I would crunch up to 13 hours a day, a little bit over. That was my record probably. And I would do 5 days a week working like that, said Adrian, the former audio programmer, adding that he quit the company after getting married. I have some friends who lost their families because of that these sort of shenanigans. And yeah, I mean, that's completely fair. Like, stuff like that puts a strain on everything else you're trying to do in your life when you dedicate so much time to your job and you have the illusion of, oh, you don't have to work that hard. But there's so many internal things that are going on that it's like a bit of like psychological warfare from upper management against the devs in order to get them to work the way that they want to, and manipulating people and brainwashing people into thinking that this is the way that things have to be done in order to get the game out. But in actuality, no, crunching doesn't solve the issue of programming at all whatsoever. So yeah, it's just a terrible decision that has been made yet again for another game. But that is a critical part of the industry that just needs to be addressed in general. The overtime didn't make development on the game any faster. At E3 in June 2019, CD Projekt announced that the game would come out on April 16th, 2020. Fans were elated, but internally, some members of the team could only scratch their heads, wondering how they could possibly finish the game by then. One person said they thought the date was a joke. Based on the team's progress, they expected the game to be ready in 2022. Oh. Oh. Developers created memes about the game getting delayed, making bets on when it would happen. Holy crap. They just treated it like, nah, bruh, this isn't happening. That's funny though. Wow, that's crazy. Canceling features and scaling down the size of Cyberpunk's Metropolis helped, but the team's growth hampered some departments, developers said. While The Witcher 3 was created by roughly 240 in-house staff, according to the company, Cyberpunk's credits show that the game had well over 500 internal developers. At the same time, CD Projekt remained understaffed. Games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, often held up as examples of the quality the company wanted to uphold, were made by dozens of offices and thousands of people. There were also cultural barriers about hiring expats from the US and Western Europe. The studio mandated everyone speak English during meetings with non-Polish speakers, but not everyone followed the rules. Even as the timeline looked increasingly unrealistic, management said delaying wasn't an option. Their goal was to release Cyberpunk 2077 before the new consoles from Microsoft and Sony, expected in the fall of 2020, were even announced. That way, the company could launch the game on existing PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, then double dip by releasing versions down the road for the next generation of consoles. People who bought the old console versions could receive free upgrades when the new ones were available. Some engineers realized that Cyberpunk was too complex of a game to run well on the 7-year-old consoles. With its city full of bustling crowds and hulking buildings, they said management dismissed their concerns, however, citing their success in pulling off The Witcher 3. So two key things in this paragraph, right? This is the reason why, despite all the glitches, despite listening to QA, that's 55 years too early, despite all of the warnings that were given to them about this game and about the condition it was in, and this is why people kept lying and saying the game was ready, and why they didn't delay, is this sentence right here. They wanted to double dip both versions at the same time. That's why Cyberpunk 2077 released the way it did. Because they wanted that Christmas shmoney, they wanted that last gen shmoney, they wanted that new gen shmoney, all in the same window, the same time span. And that was worth the launch that they ended up receiving. I tell you. Wow. The second important thing as well is, again, we see this reoccurring issue, citing their success and pulling off The Witcher 3. It's the same thing that BioWare went through with Anthem and all and stuff, yada yada yada. The whole BioWare magic, the idea that, oh well, we're the people who made X exclaimed game that people absolutely love and adore, so that obviously means we know what we're doing and we're the best and we'll make it happen. It's all right, we'll improv it, pull it out of our butt. Wow, I hadn't even thought of it that way. That's hella scummy business practice. Yeah. How much to pay to win? Yeah, it's just what it comes down to. They wanted that money, and they, the uppers, the people up there, kept thinking, it's gonna be all right. This is a talented team. They're gonna make it work. They're gonna figure it out. And then meanwhile, the developers are sitting there thinking, wait, we're working on a game that's going to be ready in 2022, right? Right? That's the game we're working on, right? It's not coming out in 2020. And then they announce, hey guys, guess what? April 2020. What? Can't make this up, man. That is crazy. Oh man. Absolutely insane. It's all clear to me now. It's like I can see the code in the Matrix. No Keanu Reeves, pun intended. Like, all of this makes sense now. Because in my video that I posted, like, what was it, yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever. In the video I posted about their apology, I was like, how can you say that QA tested the issues, tested for glitches on consoles, but they couldn't find any glitches? That's literally impossible when every single person who owns a console version or a console copy of the game can repeat the same glitches over and over again consistently in the same areas. That's exactly what they test for. I was like, he's got to be lying. They knew what the issues were and still put out the game anyways. This is so crazy. This is crazy. I love it. I don't love it because a whole bunch of us, including myself, were sold a faulty product, but I love the intrigue and the disaster behind the scenes and how a game went so wrong. This is absolutely insane that things have turned out this way. By the end of 2019, management fully acknowledged that Cyberpunk 2077 needed to be delayed. Last January, the company pushed the game's release to September. In March, as the pandemic began ravaging the globe and forcing people to stay inside, CD Projekt staff had to complete the game from their homes without access to the office's console development kits. Most developers would play builds of the game on their home computers. So it wasn't clear to everyone how Cyberpunk might run on PS4 and Xbox One. External tests, however, showed clear performance issues. They knew. I'm so glad they're suing though, the investors, because that's the thing. Like, it's one thing, like, I'm a consumer who bought it and it was a faulty product and I still got my refund, yada yada yada. But if I am someone who's like, you know what, I believe in CD Projekt, I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. I'm gonna become an investor in the stocks of CD Projekt. Here's my money. Make this game, and I want to be a part of this experience and this growing business. Well, guess what? They constantly lied to you about where the process of that game was. And like, oh yes, don't pull your money. Anyways, the game runs great on consoles, and we will see you in 2020. And that's just how the conversation ended. Like, oh my gosh, I would be pissed. I'd be pissed if I put in money in this, man. If I invested my hard-earned cash into stocks in this company, oh my gosh, and I was blatantly lied to, like, I don't know. I don't see how Cyberpunk or CD Projekt wins in a lawsuit when they just blatantly lied to developers on multiple conference calls. So, that's crazy. That is crazy. Iwinski also said that the communication issues resulting from teams working at home amid COVID-19 restrictions meant a lot of the dynamics we normally take for granted got lost over video calls and emails. The game's debut slipped again to November. As the launch date drew closer, everyone at the studio knew the game was in a rough shape and needed more time. According to several people familiar with the development, chunks of dialogue were missing. Some actions didn't work properly. When management announced in October that the game had gone gold, that it was ready to be pressed to discs, there were still major bugs being discovered. The game was delayed another 3 weeks as exhausted programmers scrambled to fix as much as they could. When Cyberpunk 2077 finally launched on December 10th, the backlash was swift and furious. Players shared videos of screens overrun with tiny trees of characters gallivanting around without pants, and compiled lists of features that had been promised but were not in the final product. Many of the glitches and graphical issues can be fixed, developers say, though it's not clear what it will take to regain a spot in the PlayStation Store. Winning back fans may be difficult, but there's precedent in the video game world. Games like No Man's Sky, a space simulator, Final Fantasy XIV, and online role-playing game, yes, all games that made comebacks. Let's see here, and the market seems to be hopeful. CD Projekt's shares rose 6% at almost the most in 6 weeks after Iwinski's message. So there you have it. I think literally everything else is just other articles and ads. Well, that concludes the story right there, chat. That's absolutely insane. And all those developers just I think that's who I feel bad for the most, is the developers who were just chilling and trying to make a good game. And then in 2016, the new director comes in and he's like, all right, here's what we're doing. I've got an idea. What if we took the game that we have right now, but we started over? I've got an idea. What if we took everything we have right now, but we just made it not work? Huh? What do you think of that idea, kids? It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, this article confirmed everything I had been speculating, and I got so much flack before the game came out of people just being like, oh, Daniel, you're being too negative. They don't have to show you console gameplay than this and that and da. They showed more gameplay than any other developer ever has. Well, it turns out they showed 48 minutes of a game that didn't exist at the time, which is funny in hindsight. Two, I always kept wondering, I was like, why are they not showing console gameplay? They just won't show it. And then when they did show it, it was all like, oh, wow. They're sitting in a car that's moving slowly. They're slowly walking down the street. This game looks great. But then as soon as you start sprinting in the game, it drops to 13 frames. Again, this is a game that I played on the PlayStation 5. I had 40 crashes in 2 days. 40 crashes in 2 days of playing the game. It was not up to par. It was not ready. And yeah, it's just a mess. Absolute mess. But yeah, this sheds light on so many things that went wrong in the development of this game, and it's crazy. It's crazy. Every time I think things are kind of done with this game and talking about it, something crazy ends up happening, and I'm like, oh no, it's worse. Oh no, this situation keeps getting worse. Oh, chat. Adam Badowski responded. The studio had actually responded to Jason Schreier on Twitter. Oh, now we're getting spicy. Oh, we're getting mad spicy. Okay. So this is the dude from the article who ended up doing the hostile takeover. So he had some. So he said, "I've read your piece and tweets. Thank you for the read. I have some thoughts." So this, again, chat, this is the guy who took over the project in 2016, and this is what he had to say. Fans and journalists were wowed by Cyberpunk. So this is his response to specifically things inside of the article, taking words and trying to expound upon them. So in the article where it says fans and journalists were wowed by Cyberpunk 2077's ambition and scale, what they didn't know was that the demo was almost entirely fake. So Adam's response is, it's hard for a trade show game demo not to be a test of vision or vertical slice 2 years before the game ships, but that doesn't mean it's fake. Compare the demo with the game. Look at the dum-dum scene or the car chase or the many other things. What the people reading your article may not know is that games are not made in a linear fashion and start looking like the final product only a few months before launch. Okay, I won't mind. Okay. If you look at the demo now, it's different, yes, but that's what the work in progress watermark is for. A final game looks and plays way better than the demo ever was. Well, not on console. I think you might want to rephrase that. But he's not wrong, but he's not right at the same time. There's a difference between selling something that's your intended vision and then also, I guess, selling something of the game that doesn't quite exist yet and hasn't been finalized for how it's going to actually work. And that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, the game didn't work on consoles. And even when you kind of bring up the thing of like comparisons, like, yeah, sure, but it still didn't work on consoles. And on top of that, when I bring up the example of God of War, they still were able to deliver something that was very, very similar, if not better, to the original, but it worked when it shipped. The reason why it's so similar to Anthem is because this was the last thing they needed to be working on at that time, when they could have been polishing the game and working on the game, instead of delivering a vertical slice of something that wasn't quite representative of the final product, especially when it came to performance. But that's besides the point at the moment. As for missing features, Adam continues, that's part of the creation process. Features come and go as we see if they work or not. Also, car ambushes exist in the final game, almost verbatim to what we showed in the demo. Keep reading. And if we get a bit more granular about the release, the vision we presented in this demo evolved into something that got multiple 9 out of 10s and 10s out of 10s on PC. Are you serious? Okay. Just for the record, my mom says we did really good over here. It's like, yes. Your mom says you're very good at playing soccer, but here's the problem, son. You literally pee the bed every single night. That's still the problem. As for the old gen consoles, yes, that is another case, but we've owned up to that and we are working super hard to eliminate the bugs. On PC too, we know that's not a perfect vision either, and we are proud of Cyberpunk 2077 as a game and artistic vision. That is not what I'd call disastrous. Bold. That is a bold thing to say. Sure. Okay. My man's is feeling himself. Okay. All right, so the next quote from the article that he wanted to discuss: most of the staff knew and openly said it wouldn't be ready for release in 2020. His response was, you talked with 20 people, some being ex-employees, only one of whom was not anonymous. I wouldn't call that most of the over 500 people staff openly said what you claim. Here's the problem with that. First off, I don't like it when people try to bring up when people come out anonymously in journalism. I was a mass comm major in college. I worked as a journalist for 4 years straight. I was the co-editor-in-chief of my student newspaper. We did plenty of great things, worked on documentaries, won awards, all right? So I am equipped in saying that when it comes to dealing with anonymity, it is important. It is important when it risks the well-being of the person whom you were discussing the topic with. And it does not invalidate, it does not make it any less important. It doesn't make it any less true just because the person doesn't want to reveal their identity. So I don't like that he pulls the only one of which is not anonymous. Second thing I don't like about this, almost every single person who works at that studio is under NDA. Or some form of NDA when they become an employee at that company. That's why they have to go anonymous as well, because more than likely they can be sued by their employer for speaking out and coming forward for what's actually happening. How else do you think 500 other staff members stay quiet? I wonder why. It's almost like maybe they all signed a piece of paper that says they're not allowed to talk about any of the development process or any of their techniques, and that they have to stay quiet and shut their mouths about what's actually going on at the studio, or they could face repercussions or even termination. Maybe that's why all those people didn't come forward. Yeah, that makes sense. Probably because they're afraid of losing their jobs. God, guy's a dunce. Like, this guy is an absolute dunce. This is the hard-hitting journalism for which I subscribe. Thank you. But yeah, this guy's an absolute dingleberry. He's trying to like
checkmate. Actually, who are these people? And what about all the other people who worked here who have said nothing?
Wow, really? It's like they're under contract, and that's why they have to stay anonymous. And the one person who did spoke was a ex-employee who's not afraid of repercussions. Like, it just sounds stupid. I don't understand. I don't know. Oh my god, hello Zoom. That's a Zoom for you. Look at that. It just sounds so silly. He really should have waited and spoken to a lawyer before making a statement. A few non-Polish staffers shared stories about co-workers using Polish in front of them, which violated company rules, made them feel ostracized, they said. Were the co-workers talking shit about them? I don't remember that being in the article. Interesting. That wasn't in the article unless that was edited. Unless that was re-edited. I don't remember that being in the article. Might have been re-edited. But Adam responded to that portion saying, everyone here speaks English during meetings. Every company-wide email and announcement is in English. all that is mandatory. Rule of thumb is to switch to English when there's a person not speaking a given language in a casual conversation. It is, however, pretty normal for Germans to speak German, Poles speaking Polish, Spaniards speaking Spanish. There are 44 nationalities at the studio. You get the point. When there's no one else around, we are working in a multicultural environment. If the question is if it's hard to move to another country, sometimes culture and work and live there, then the answer is yes. But that's universal to every company all over the world. And we're doing what we can to ease that transition. I don't really see this as a big issue in the way that it's presented, both in the article and the way that he's trying to respond to it. It kind of seems like a non-issue just for the simple fact of the way that it's presented in the article isn't very clear for its existence. That's just kind of my speculation based off other things I've known and other things that I have heard been said about working at CD Projekt Red and the work environment around it, so maybe that contributes in that way. But besides that, it's just this is a very strange thing to want to respond to out of every single thing that was the side of that article. It's a little bit weird. You had a lot to pick from. So whatever floats his boat. I love that. We owned up to that. It's a super generous way of saying we got caught trying to sell an unfinished game for easier money, so we are not blaming it on the underpaid QA testers who didn't get to see their families because of the executive lawsuits of the executive suits set countless unrealistic deadlines. That's very accurate. I like that. It's so silly looking at these people saying, there goes Jason Schreier with a BS article. Like, Jesus Christ, like, how do you drink the Kool-Aid that much, man? Like, just people are just such like lapdogs. Like, we didn't even have to sit here for that long, chat, and just analyze what was said and being able to pick apart and see holes in Badowski's arguments. It's simple. It's not even like, it doesn't take that much of an IQ, barely double digits, to see the holes in his arguments. It's insane. This is something. So he responded, Adam, I appreciate the responses. As I'm sure you're aware, the team declined to respond to my specific questions or provide an interview before my article went live. But if you'd like to give your perspective on the topics you didn't cover here, I'd be happy to chat anytime. I think that was all he said. And then he said CD Projekt Red chose not to respond to specific questions or make Badowski available for an interview for our article. So it's interesting to see these comments arriving now. Okay, so yeah, Jason Schreier did today. I do regret bringing up the language issue since it's gotten a disproportionate amount of attention and is not particularly a big deal. Okay, so yeah, that's what I thought. Worth noting, however, Badowski doesn't address the brutal crunch, the unrealistic timeline. Exactly. Yeah, it's just the things he chose to focus on were strange, right? Like, he focuses on the E3 demo. He focuses on the E3 demo. He focuses on the language thing, the people he interviewed, and claiming, well, not everyone feels that way for most of the more than likely NDA staff. That's which is so funny. Like, do you know how many people worked on something like Assassin's Creed Unity? Thousands upon thousands of people worked on Assassin's Creed Unity. It ended up being one of the most botched, video game releases of all time. But did we see thousands of responses from those developers, or hundreds of responses from the developers explaining what happened? No. NDAs. What a story. What a story, Chet.